think it's working. Does it say live on your thingies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think the questions are about the child's rights thing, right?
Yeah.
What does the CRC stand for? Child's Rights?
Child's Rights Convention.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I just did all of those, so.
That was pretty crazy to watch. I didn't really think it was real. I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I feel like it is too far stretched. Which, I mean, there's proof on the website, but it's still like, I read it and I'm like, no smart person would ever pass letting it, like, getting mad at the parents for, like, saying you can't date that guy or something like that. I don't think that they should make it so that the parents are, like, have all power. I think that you need to talk about things, but if parent has to go to court because they, like, voice their opinion about something, I feel like no one's going to listen to this new constitution. Yeah. Although that one girl did just sue her parents for kicking her out to go to college, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't remember where. It's in the United States, though. Their parents told her if she didn't go to college, they weren't going to. She's over 18. They said if you didn't go to college, we're going to kick you out of the house. And she said, make me. So they, like, packed up her stuff and left it outside the house, and then she sued them.
Whoa. Did she win?
I don't know. I just read it when I was doing my research. And I was like, grow up.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those issues, I mean, obviously a 4-year-old or even a 10-year-old, they're not really going to think about doing that unless someone else is giving them,
yeah,
for them. So, and I do think that the Child's Rights Convention is beneficial to a lot of countries, but in our country, we, like they said in the interview, we already have laws that protect children, so we didn't really need to take part in that, and it's other countries that need to be held more accountable.
Yeah.
It's mostly teenagers that would do stuff like that because they're hormonal and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll look at the first question. What were your impressions of the CRC article and video by the United Nations? And what about the article and videos by What about the article and videos of parental rights? So I guess that's kind of what we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for a year and a half with this organization that is fighting against child trafficking. And what made me really frustrated when I watched the CRC video of the United Nations was just, like, they kept saying, yes, it's already done so much, but it calls us to action, and yes, it's solved all these problems, but actually child trafficking is increasing in the world. Like, it's being driven, supply and demand, more people using pornography, more people attracted to children in that way, and they're kidnapping, and parents are selling their kids in a lot of countries. There's a lot of countries that have like an 80% child trafficking rate, and there's a lot of villages and cities that have 100%, trafficking rate, and the governments don't do anything about it. So I feel like the Child's Rights Convention obviously was very needed, and they need to do more to hold countries and cities and governments accountable. But like I said, in our country and in developed countries where they already have laws protecting those children, then and an infrastructure that's actually fighting to help, then they don't really need those other clauses and the other parts of it.
Yeah. What's stopping those countries from doing anything, though? Like, they just don't care?
Well, frankly, they're just corrupt. A lot of them are corrupt. It's probably like I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, but I know a lot of them are corrupt where they're basically saying, you know, this is our income. So, are we going to stop our country's biggest income because they're exporting children? Um, and that's kind of like every time that organizations will go in to bust like a huge sale, then they'll they'll mysteriously find out about it and move all of the children to a different location. So obviously there's people in the police, as soon as the police get involved from that country, then they find out and they move the kids. So a lot of places they don't involve the police or like any people in the area because they'll just ruin it. And sometimes I think that it's too big of a problem, and there's just not enough organization and not enough, I don't know, but the U.S. is one of the biggest importers, so
Really?
yeah.
How?
Because we think we're teaching our kids that pornography is normal, and then that's happening when they're like 9 and 10, and then by the time they're 16, 17, 18, they're bored with traditional pornography and they're on to the next thing, and then it's the supply and demand, more people involved in pornography, the more kids that are being sold. And the kids only have like a life expectancy of a couple of years because of the abuse and diseases that happen in that field. So, the kids die and they buy new kids. It's disgusting, and that people are just kind of used to it.
That's awful.
I never knew. I mean, I guess I just didn't think of that part when, especially with like the new sex ed curriculum that people want to put in where like viewing pornography is okay.
Yeah.
I just never thought of that other aspect of it. Like, there's got to be someone to supply it, I guess, and whatever is the most popular, they're going to try to get more of that source.
Yeah, and like for the Super Bowl, there was estimated like an import of over 400,000 children. Now, when I say children, that's anywhere from like age 6 months up to like 17, 18-year-olds. That they all fall in that bracket. But a lot of people, a lot of them are like older, but there are people that are buying like 6 and 7-year-olds, and unfortunately the bracket of like normal keeps getting younger and younger. And anyway, it's really bad, and I don't advise reading about it's good to read about statistics. It's not helpful to read about stories because they'll haunt you.
Yeah.
And like the cases that I've worked with, they still like I can't fall asleep a lot of times because I just worry.
You're so upset.
Yeah, like it's just really, really upsetting. But without getting too like wrapped up in the sensationalism of it all, like there is a lot that we can do, and there's things that we need to be aware of because it is in the U.S. too, to watch out for and to call the police and say, this house seems strange, or this seems fishy, and all it takes is a few reports like that, and they'll investigate,
Yeah.
So.
My brother's in 7th grade, and there's a 12-year-old who's pregnant in his class. And she, like, brags about it, and there was, like, a video of it, I guess. Like, I just can't believe that.
Where are you from?
I'm from Georgia.
Oh,
That's really sad.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's, like, it's, like, super unheard of, too, because it's a pretty strong, like, Baptist community.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, it's just gross. And I taught at that school for 2 years. Like, I probably taught that student. I taught 6th and 7th grade the past 2 years, and so I just like, oh, it's just really upsetting. And do you think like stronger children's rights would help that at all?
Well, I mean, I don't really get as upset about pregnancies, honestly, as much as I do about like,
Abuse.
well, because in our area it's like that. I live in Florida, and there's super Baptist, like strong Bible Belt, goes down here. But they did a bunch of surveys in the whole state of Florida, and of the sexually active teenagers, like 20% of them will become pregnant, and 40% of those pregnancies will end in abortion.
Oh my gosh.
So that bothers me worse than, like, if I see a teenager that's pregnant, I'm like, okay, well, they easily could have had an abortion. It's so common now, apparently, So I'm like, at least they didn't do that. But a 12-year-old, I would worry about how old the dad was.
Yeah, I don't know that, but that's pretty upsetting.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I'll stop.
No, you're welcome to.
It's interesting. I'm so naive in the world, and it's interesting to learn about these things, just like you said, to be aware and to know what the signs are so we can report those things if we needed to. It was nice to know. Thanks for sharing, Stephanie.
Mm.
I will look at the second question. If you are from or have ever lived in a country where the CRC has already been ratified, what are some of the positive and negative effects you have observed? And if you are from the US or Somalia where it has not been yet ratified, research another country to document the positive and negative effects and how they relate how they could benefit or hurt your country in the future if we do pass the CRC ratification. I personally didn't research anything, but I think that you did have a point with your story that you just told, and I can probably take some wild guesses at how crazy things would get if we did ratify that.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that it's like you said, in our country, there's a lot of entitled people, so it's kind of like an opposite effect. It's like if you're in a country where there's laws already protecting children, then I can see how you're just kind of giving like ammo and structure and a means for them to carry out being entitled. Like it's so easy to sue your own parents. All you got to do is find a lawyer that wants to make some money off your situation.
Yeah.
But like in other countries, I don't know how positive it would be because I wonder if when people pass that, if then they're kind of like, oh, well, they're doing everything they can. And they kind of don't, like the video even said, they don't really follow through a lot. Like I wonder if, I don't know, what the difference is in countries where they have ratified it versus when they haven't in actually stopping crimes against children.
Yeah, I wish there was more info on that. I also feel like if they did pass that in America, I feel like you said the American people are very self-entitled, and so if someone passes a law that says you can't do this,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to throw a fit. Because I feel like that's largely what the whole gay marriage thing is like you can't get married and everyone's like throwing a fit because like why can't I? Why don't I have equal rights? So if we pass a thing that parents aren't allowed to do anything to their children, if a parent can get in trouble for like speaking out against what they think their child is doing wrong, I think the parents of America will go ballistic. And I think the only reason that we haven't seen it all in the news is because I don't think they've really talked about it that much. I didn't even know about it until this article that we just listened to. I feel like the more educated people become, the more I think America will fight against it. Then again, maybe not. Maybe we're just like, yeah, let everyone do whatever they want. So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was thinking too. I did my research on sex education, and it was interesting when I was reading. A lot of states now want to push the LGBTQ. I didn't even know Q was an added thing until I did this research, but
You.
it's queer and questioning. But I thought queer was gay, but apparently it's a different category. I don't know. I'm confused now.
I
But
thought it was like a derogatory term.
yeah, I was
I know, I
like,
thought that was very politically incorrect.
yeah. So
That's interesting.
But apparently, a lot of the states want to push for this LGBTQ lifestyles and sex ed to be presented in classes. So teaching kids how to have sex with someone of the same sex, which obviously we would not think was a good idea, because the people who lose in the let's teach everything to keep everyone happy are the kids that, you know, are being taught good principles at home, are not taught that these things are okay, you know. And anyway, okay, I'm losing my train of thought. Uh, oh, but what you were saying, how like with in this one survey, they did like this huge group of kids. There was like over 100 kids that participated in a, like, what do they call when they're trying something out? It was like a trial sex ed course. And all of them, none of the parents knew, because the way they got around that was that they said, well, a lot of these kids are gay and they're part of their LGBTQ, like, you know, clubs in their high schools. And so if their parents don't know, then you're going against the child's right of, like, privacy from their parents. So, like, they took these courses that included pornography as a means of teaching. And anyway, I was like, seriously, the parents didn't know? Like,
I would have a heyday. I would throw a fit.
yeah, so I
So
think
I would
frustrated.
too.
I could see this law going completely berserk and, like, having basically not just kids taking advantage, but school systems. You know, we're going to teach whatever we want, and the kids have a right to know what they want to know, and you don't have a say, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. So, what was the lady's name? Kelly was talking about how they, you know, Satan has his ways of getting into it, and like he covers the bad by making it look good. And just what you were saying when you were saying, you know, the reason that they have this education is so that kids learn to accept everyone and learn not to judge and learn not to and don't bully, and that's good. We want that, but they're teaching them to accept things that we as parents don't want to teach them as good, right? Which is the bad part of it.
And that was a part of the parenting right or parental rights article thing. And it says like it would be against this, what is like the structure of the CRC, or the CRC part of it was that if you opted out of the sex ed for your child, then you'd be going against their rights. And I think that is kind of where every state wants to really push this. It's kind of like it's not because we don't have, this isn't ratified in the U.S., it's not their rights, it's the parents' rights to make sure what kind of education they're getting. And if parents don't want it, then it shouldn't be pushed.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was a really good point from both of you, or all three of you. Especially, I never even thought about the way that the school system would take advantage of the child's rights. I mean, you could basically just, because there's a lot of schools that are definitely Democrat and definitely Republican, and my high school was heavily Republican, but then like my teachers refused to teach anything Democratic at all. Like we would go on huge rants about how much they hated politics, and I had one of the answers on my test was, will you vote Democrat for the next election? And if you hit yes, you got the point wrong. Like, my teachers were just, like, really, really strongly Republican. And they did it as a joke, but it also, like, I still never learned anything about the Democratic Party. And if there's schools, I know there's schools that are very pro-LGBTQ, every letter of the alphabet, and I feel like they'll definitely push things on their students, and if they can get around parents, and there's those people that want to change America and they're trying to change the things we learn in our schools, they'll definitely take advantage of this. And I didn't think about that, and that makes me a little worried. Especially knowing that that they got around already without this being ratified. The parents didn't know they were like being taught that pornography is good. I mean, someone had to have gotten in serious trouble for that, because if there was no parents that spoke out about that once they found out, something's wrong with America, because I hear about it now and I just want to have a cow. So the third question is, sorry, how did Kelly's presentation help you understand the ecological approach to family advocacy? I'm not sure what ecological approach means. Does anyone?
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I've been talking a lot. You go.
I was just going to say, I think it's from Yuri Bromfenfrenner, his model with the micro system and the exosystem, and then it kind of like radiates outward. From what I got from her speech, I guess, is that a lot of it came from her microsystem, like what was affecting her, and then she kind of like spread it through other organizations, like her thoughts, and she kind of instead of letting whatever thing that she felt was bad affect her, she kind of turned it around to say like she was advocating for what she thought was correct, and then it affected other groups. Like she felt like the playground was unsafe for the students because someone could come easily to kidnap one, and so she kind of started out small and then it went out larger, I guess. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just how I think of it. Like, it started with her and then she let it radiate outward to where it got into the school system and became influenced other people.
I think the thing that I learned from her, just like what Michaela was saying, she started with what affected her, and I think that's the most important thing to point maybe for us is if we start with the things that we know and that affect us because we'll be most passionate about them. So I'm definitely going to be most passionate about my child and his education, and I'm going to want to advocate for that, and I'm going to want to take care of the family because I have a family, and I strongly believe in that. I don't know if I'll advocate for, I don't know, there's other things that I don't feel so strongly about, and I'm not going to try to approach those things until I feel passionate about it and until I do research. So I think that's the one point that I learned from her is that the things that you're most passionate about are the things that you're going to advocate for and you're going to care most about.
Very good. That's awesome. That's exactly what I'm thinking as well.
Well, and then the other thing I got from her was she kept saying one person can make a difference, and then she gave so many examples of how she's made a difference. And so, based on the ecological model that we looked at, she's in a macro system, she's an individual, her motivation comes from her family, but she was able to influence all of those other layers until it got out to. I mean, she goes to the UN. That's international, and so, anyways, that's what I got from her is that as an individual, as a person, your motivation comes from your microsystem, but you can influence all of the other systems.
Let's see. What system or level do you personally feel would be the most difficult to advocate, and why? Do you think that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you think that is meaning like which is the most hard to reach with like being a family advocate, or like which is the hardest to like be in? I didn't understand that one either.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of interpreting it like which one is the hardest for us to influence. And I would say for me personally, it would be internationally because, you know, like the biggest system is the hardest because I'm I'm not like I can't go to the UN right now. So, like how am I going to make an international difference at this moment in my life? You know, like I think that the closer to our sphere or the microsystem that we are, the more influence we can have, most easily anyways.
I think we have to build up to those things. Like right now, like you said, I wouldn't be able to do anything, make a difference. I mean, one person can make a difference, but I wouldn't be able to make a difference in the UN right now because I have no idea what I'm talking about. But obviously, if you do your research and you build up and you work in your community or you work in your school district first and then the community and then your state, and if you build up, then I'm sure we could eventually influence places like the UN. But I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely think that you can't just expect to like march right into the UN and make a difference. But I agree. And I think it really does start with communities because the people who are most likely to listen to you are the people you're around and the people you develop friends with. And I think the more you talk about those around you, the more you create a community, and the more that I think the more you create a community and then they share it, it's the people close to you. And then you together will step up to the next plate and you'll have like tons of followers with you, and then you step up higher and higher and higher. I think it definitely has to start close. And I think the highest part to reach would be the international level. Even the national level I feel like is really difficult to get any sort of attention there. So I definitely agree with that. And what system or level do you feel is the most important to advocate, and why?
I would definitely say, I mean, the smallest level is the microsystem, which is your family, school, community. I don't remember all of the other ones, but the most important one, which is why we're even in this class, is the family. I mean, we're all in the pro-family fight. So I mean, that's definitely the most important one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think because is it the meso system where the school, is that what you said, the school and system is where, like, as parents we're going to have the most contact with, and if they are teaching something that we don't agree with, we need to be sure that we're advocating not only for our own children, but maybe for other parents who don't feel brave enough to speak up about something that they feel is wrong. And in the video, she kept talking about how like one person can really make a difference, and it does help other community members. And so I think it's important that we, as parents or as family advocates, just stand up for the things and don't worry about being embarrassed or having others look at us weirdly because we're doing it. If we do it for the right reasons, people will notice.
Yeah. I agree with that too.
I guess my point was, I think the family is the most important, but when you talk about the most important thing, we need to be concerned with what's happening in our own families before we can be concerned with other families. And so I think that's one of the things that I've learned in this class is that it's important to be an advocate, but the reason that you're an advocate is to protect your own family. So anyways, in my mind, I think we need to take care of our own families first, make sure things are in order there, and then be an advocate in all of the other systems that there are.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking, like, I have a lot of opportunities to talk to people about, like, I don't know, a lot of things to do with the family, feminism and having children, and having more than I'm expecting my third baby now, and they're close in age, and you would not believe the looks that I get everywhere I go now that I'm starting to show, and I'm carrying around my 16-month-old who's not walking yet, and people are looking at me like, and my 3-year-old's walking around. I'm like, and I just get so many looks like, why did you have more than 2 children? I don't know. I feel like once I was expecting the third, it's like it's totally different. People treat you different.
Just want it.
Yeah, well, I don't really care. I'm just like, whatever. I love my children, and that's why I had another one. But I get a lot of questions about that, about being a stay-at-home mom, and I speak out pretty strongly against pornography, and I'll bring it up sometimes, which I think makes some people uncomfortable, including my mom. But I just feel like people, because of my work with the other side of that, like people think that it's a victimless crime, and as members of the church, a lot of times we say, well, yeah, but you're hurting your family, but even on top of that, which that's horrible to tear apart families that way, but there's another side. There's a whole, there's villages completely torn apart, and children's lives are ruined and ended in horrible abuse. And I just think that, like, if we are willing to talk to people, then we'll be put in situations, whether it's at the park with our kids or like just in passing with people at church or from other churches. I think we have a lot of opportunities to share things, little bits and pieces of advocacy, and if we can change another mom's viewpoint, then we've changed her family, and we've changed her kids, just like our role as a mother is important, so are every other, mom out there or woman, and I don't know, I just think we should try and be more open about talking about these issues.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't really pick one level that I think is the most important. This is something I want to do for a career, and I would dream to be able to speak at the UN or just to do anything. I get so frustrated with everything I learn every week that I just like storm around my house and like rant to my husband about all the things that I want to fix, and I get really frustrated. And one of my biggest goals, I think, is once I do start having kids, is I really want to be involved in the school systems. I think that's a really big level for me. I just want to have like 2 fists up, and I just want to tell them everything I know. I want them to listen, and I want to like argue with them if they think they're right when they're wrong. And I still want to be open-minded, and I still want to listen, but I feel like everyone's getting so hyped up right now about like, oh, your freedoms and being modern, about being able to choose who you want and be liberated, but I think everyone's forgetting that I feel like my husband pointed this out the other day, in the scriptures it's always like there's a really righteous generation, and then they have unrighteous offspring, and then those children learn from their unrighteous parents, so then they become righteous, but then they have rebellious offspring. And it just kind of goes back and forth, and I think we've kind of gone through those phases. If you look at the end of the 1800s, families were really prominent and education was prominent, and then you hit the 20s, and then women were like showing their ankles, and then you hit like the 50s, and family was really important again, and people learned from their parents that like maybe going crazy isn't the best thing. But then you had the 80s when we had the highest rate of teen pregnancies, even more than today. And then I feel like in the 90s there was like the family sitcoms, and it was still kind of rocky, but now today everything's like anything goes. And I'm hoping that if we can hit rock bottom, that we would be able to bounce up from that instead of accepting that that's the way it is. And I feel like at least your school systems are one of the most important, because that's where children learn everything. I mean, everything that I know about doing work in my life, I've learned a lot of life lessons through school. I've learned how to communicate with others. You learn how to do group projects. You learn a bunch of stuff. So I think if in schools we can teach about family, I think it can be hugely beneficial than on top of talking with your neighbors and your friends. I do think that the neighborhood is vital, but I think school systems can reach so many more people, and those people don't just stay in that community. When they graduate high school, they go all over the nation, and I think that that's somewhere that's important. But I honestly can't think of a level where I think that advocacy is not important. Does anyone have anything else? Does anyone want to summarize what we talked about? I don't know how we'll summarize it, but does anyone want to do a summary? I can do it.
I can do it. I feel bad. I just have been talking so much. Okay. It's you guys' fault. You just have to speak up and I'll stop talking. Okay, but I don't remember all the questions and I don't have it pulled up because it's on my same tab. Anyway, I'll just summarize. So we talked about how we feel like all levels are really important for us to... Okay, wait, let me go back to the beginning. What did we talk about first? I think someone else maybe should do this. That hasn't pulled up, actually. Hold on.
Questions of the articles, trafficking.
Oh yeah, and so we talked about the how there can be positive and negative side effects from the CRC being ratified in different countries, and we talked about how different examples of things that can happen in different countries when it is ratified versus when it's not, and we don't really feel like it was necessary for the U.S. because there are other laws protecting children's rights, and also because we thought about how it could affect other systems like schools and government and just how things are run with children, anything to do with children. And then we talked about how we pretty much all felt like the most important things for us to advocate and of the system would be like our own families, making sure that they're, have good knowledge and everything, and then as the system goes out and it obviously gets more difficult for us to advocate, those are less important right now, but maybe different points in our lives as we gain more knowledge. And like you said, as we kind of work our way up, we have more people behind us and more knowledge behind us, and we can help at different levels that way.
Perfect.
And Darcy, your baby's really cute.
Hi. Okay, cool. So do I hit stop broadcast now? Or how does that work?
Yeah, I think so.